My name's Elena Monroe. I'm 33. I used to edit cookbooks, regional ones, the kind with vintage illustrations and casseroles named after dead aunts. Right now, I'm sitting in a rental car parked outside my childhood home in Cypress Hollow, Oregon. There's a cherry red leather notebook on the passenger seat, my grandmother's recipe book. Only it's not really a recipe book. It smells like cinnamon and mildew. Feels heavy. Not physically, but in the way old secrets do. You know that feeling when you find something you weren't supposed to read? That buzzing in your ears, like your body knows something before your brain catches up. That's how I felt the first time I opened it. And I haven't slept through the night since. It all started, like most messed up family stories, with a funeral. My grandmother, Judith Monroe, passed away in her sleep at 89. Peaceful, apparently. She was known for her blueberry scones, her garden club trophies, and her strict Sunday dresses. People called her sweet, proper, elegant. They didn't know about the locked drawers in her sewing room, or the kitchen radio that was always turned up just a little too loud when she talked on the phone. They definitely didn't know what she kept under the floorboards. Not yet, anyway. I was the only one who showed up before the coroner arrived. Not my father, not my brother. Just me. The house smelled the same, warm and familiar in the worst way. Vanilla extract, dust, and the faint scent of cloves. It was the kind of smell that makes you feel both safe and sick to your stomach. I stood in her kitchen in the dark, watching sunlight slice through the blinds, and whispered, "Hi, Grandma. I'm sorry I didn't come sooner." And I meant it. I hadn't seen her in over a year. Not since that awkward Thanksgiving, where she barely looked at me, just poured gravy and asked if I was still unmarried. Typical Judith. She loved with food, but she weaponized silence. The will was read 3 days later in a beige law office that smelled like old printers and resentment. My dad sat stiff in a navy blazer he hadn't worn since his last court date. My Aunt Meredith was tapping away on her phone like she had a class to teach in 5 minutes. My brother, Zach, came in late. Sunglasses, smirk, and the scent of designer cologne trying to cover last night's whiskey. I felt like an extra in a movie I wasn't invited to audition for. Judith left the house to be sold and split between her children. Meredith got the antique tea set. Zach got her upright piano. Dad got the oak jewelry box, the one with the secret compartment I always loved. And me? To Eleanor, the lawyer read aloud, I leave my personal recipe journal, the one kept in the cherry red leather book. She was always the only one who understood the value of writing things down. They all chuckled. Even I smiled. It sounded sweet, like one last, affectionate nudge from my grandmother. A poetic little goodbye. But that night, in the guest bedroom, I opened it. And the smile didn't last. The first pages were normal. Lemon bars, banana bread, peach crumble, neatly written in blue ink, her trademark cursive, elegant but sharp. Then, around page 14, something shifted. The recipe was titled Apple Cider Roast, but instead of oven temps and cook times, it had strange notes in the margins. 3 crates, delivery by 7 p.m. Double-check wire before JL signs. Sugar equals 13.5 K. Confirm count next time. I blinked. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe she was getting forgetful near the end. Or maybe this was grocery shorthand I didn't understand. Except it kept happening. Another recipe. White cake for church potluck. Underneath it, in tiny writing, Shell Company confirmed. Client cleared. No contact till quarter close. No instructions, no bake time, just names, dates, and references that didn't belong in a kitchen. My chest tightened. It wasn't just odd, it was coded, precise, like notes from a transaction, not a dinner party. I closed the book and stared at the ceiling for hours. My fingers tingled like they'd touched something radioactive. The next morning, I asked my dad about it. He barely looked up from his toast. She just wrote nonsense like that to keep busy, he muttered. She got eccentric near the end. But that wasn't true. Judith wasn't eccentric. She was calculated, orderly. The kind of woman who alphabetized her pantry and kept her Christmas ornaments labeled by emotional tone. She didn't scribble. She documented. She encrypted. And now, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Even while I helped box up the house, even while Meredith cried performatively over a broken teacup, even when Zach asked if he could borrow my car for a date, I kept returning to the red notebook, reading, flipping, decoding. There were patterns, certain ingredients repeated too often. White sugar, molasses, vanilla, always paired with numbers, never measurements, and always followed by initials. JL came up over and over. Who the hell was JL? Then came one labeled Molasses Trade, Aunt May's Garage. Except we didn't have an Aunt May, and Grandma hated molasses, said it reminded her of stuck things. That page was dated October 12, 1997. Underneath, final shipment, West Route, use proxy, burn notes after. I started shaking. That was the year the old warehouse on 7th Avenue burned down. It had been ruled an accident, insurance payout in the millions. My dad was on the board of the company that owned it. I hadn't thought about that in years. Suddenly, everything inside me went cold. Because this wasn't a cookbook, it was a confession. I didn't sleep that night. I laid in bed with the recipe book on my chest, every breath shallow, every thought louder than the last. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe she was just losing her grip, or maybe this was her way of telling me something no one else was ever supposed to hear. By morning, I was already making a list of dates, of page numbers, of any names I didn't recognize. I started building my own kind of cookbook, one filled with questions. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. When Dad asked why I looked tired, I blamed the mattress. When Zach asked to borrow the car again, I handed him the keys and locked my real focus in the room behind me. Every moment alone, I pored over that book, like it was a puzzle, like it had teeth. By day 3, the pieces began to shift. There were recipes labeled things like cinnamon toast, Meredith's drop-off, and sweet pie, Shellman Memorial. I looked up the Shellman Memorial Fund online, non-profit, tax-exempt, but the listed address? It was a bakery that had closed down years ago, and the name of the fund manager? JL. I swear my stomach dropped like I'd stepped off a cliff. I took a screenshot of the site, printed it, highlighted it. This wasn't some grief-fueled obsession anymore. Something was here, something real. That night I remembered something small, something I hadn't thought about in years. A Sunday afternoon when I was 11. I had walked in on Grandma in the kitchen. She was baking something, humming to the radio. Nothing strange. Except, she jumped when she saw me. She slammed her recipe book shut. The same red one I was holding now. And she said, soft but sharp, "Some recipes aren't meant for children." I never forgot the look in her eyes. Back then, I thought she meant something poetic. Now, I wasn't so sure. The next morning, I drove into town. I needed air and distance. I went to the county library and pulled old newspaper archives. I searched the name Shellman Memorial Fund, then Cypress Hollow Fires, then JL plus Judith Monroe. And there it was. An article dated October 14, 1997. Warehouse blaze leaves town stunned. Fire ruled accidental. The article listed the owner, Hollow Holdings LLC, and one of the investors, Jonathan Leland. JL. I closed my eyes. Jonathan Leland had been my dad's business partner. He died 2 years ago, heart attack. But his name lived on. In Grandma's cookbook, dozens of times, next to entries like Blackberry Jam, Route 5, 11:45 p.m., and Vanilla Pound, 2 men, quiet, gloves on. These weren't just fake recipes, they were logs, transactions, maybe instructions, and my grandmother, the woman who once scolded me for not using enough nutmeg, had recorded every single one like a sacred ritual. I went outside and threw up in the bushes behind the library. I told myself I should stop, that I should go home, close the book, fly back to Portland, and pretend I never saw any of this. But that's the thing about truth. Once it touches you, you're never clean again. So I did what I always do when I'm overwhelmed. I baked. I went back to the house and made lemon bars, the same ones Grandma used to bring to church. Only this time, I used her exact recipe from the Red Book, and just like in the margin of the page, I added a pinch more sugar than usual. When they came out of the oven, golden and soft, I took one bite. Too sweet. Way too sweet. And in that moment, I realized that wasn't an adjustment for flavor, it was a signal. Plus one sugar meant something. Extra. Extra inventory? Extra cash? Or maybe a bribe? I checked the date written on the corner of the page, March 3rd, 2005. That was the same week the new youth center opened. It had been a huge deal. Local news came. My dad gave a speech about hope and renewal. I searched public records and found that Hollow Holdings LLC had donated $75,000 to the city for construction materials. Under a different name, a shell company. The donation wasn't listed in Grandma's tax returns, but it was there, in the pound cake. I sat down on the floor, because suddenly the smell of lemon bars didn't smell like comfort, it smelled like rot. I called my mother. She picked up on the third ring. "Hi, honey," she said. "How's it going down there?" There was a long pause before I answered. "Did you ever think Grandma might have been involved in something?" I asked. "Involved how?" "I don't know," I lied. "Like, something bigger than just being sweet and quiet and baking pies." My mum was silent for a moment. Then she sighed. "She had her ways," she said. "Judith was complicated. She kept things from all of us, even your dad." Even your dad. Even your dad. My pulse slowed, because I didn't think that was true. I think Dad knew exactly who she was, and now I was starting to figure it out too. I started lying to everyone. Not big lies, not yet. Just little ones. White, soft, necessary. I'm just sorting through her old notes. I'm working on a memorial cookbook, something personal. No, I'm fine. Just tired. It was easier that way. Because the truth, I was spiraling. Every day I uncovered something new in that book, and every night I'd reread it all over again, like a masochist looking for closure in a wound that kept bleeding. I stopped answering Zach's calls. I ignored Dad's sudden offer to go grab lunch, just us. I knew what he was doing. He could feel me drifting. And for the first time, maybe ever, I wasn't pretending to be part of this family. I was watching it from the outside, and what I saw scared the hell out of me. One night, around 2 a.m., I flipped back to a page I'd avoided. The handwriting was sloppier, desperate, edges stained with coffee. It was a chocolate tart recipe, but it was dated. August 2nd, 2009. That date. It scratched something deep inside me. I opened Google and typed it in what happened in 2009. The first result was a charity gala. My father was honored as Civic Hero of the Year for creating a housing program for low-income families. The newspaper photo showed him beaming. Judith stood beside him, one hand on his shoulder. But the tart recipe, the same date, had a footnote. Used EM as signatory. Should cover for now. My heart stopped. EM, Elena Monroe. Me. I was 17 in 2009. I remembered signing something back then. A stack of forms Dad gave me. He said it was paperwork for my college scholarship. I didn't ask questions. He smiled like he was proud, like he was doing me a favor. I remember feeling chosen. Turns out I was, just not in the way I thought. I stayed in bed for most of that day. Curtains drawn, stomach in knots. That wasn't just a paper trail, it was a weapon. They used my name, my signature, to mask a financial transaction, one that was probably illegal, definitely unethical. It was all in the recipe book, wrapped up in cocoa powder and pretty cursive. And I hadn't just found the secret, I was part of it. I started to wonder how many other documents had my name, how many recipes had been cooked using me. Later that week, I visited Mrs. Halverson, Grandma's old friend and fellow church baker. She lived alone in a small yellow house with peeling shutters and a garden that smelled like time and grief. She opened the door and gasped when she saw me. "Elena?" she said, voice cracking. "You look just like Judith did," right before she got quiet. We sat in her living room drinking tea that tasted like memory. After some silence, I asked her, gently, "Did my grandmother ever seem afraid of something?" Mrs. Halverson didn't answer right away. Then she leaned forward and whispered, "She told me once that if anything ever happened to her, the wrong recipe would end up in the wrong hands." She paused. Her fingers trembled around her teacup. "She said some things you write in ink, and others you write in sugar, so only the people who know can ever taste the truth." I nearly dropped my cup. I asked her about the red book. She went pale. "I thought she burned it," she said. "She said she had to." "Why?" "Because someone in the family was getting reckless." I didn't say a word, but inside I was screaming. Because that meant Judith tried to stop all this. She wanted to destroy the evidence, but someone stopped her. That night, I searched every inch of the attic. It was covered in dust and mouse droppings, but I found it. A box marked Summer Recipes 85. Inside wasn't food. It was a stack of old floppy disks, receipts, and one sealed envelope labeled, "For E, if she ever starts asking." My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single piece of lined notebook paper. In Judith's shaky script it read, "They told me you'd never look too closely. That affectionate nudge from my grandmother. A poetic little goodbye." But that night, in the guest bedroom, I opened it. And the smile didn't last. The first pages were normal. Lemon bars, banana bread, peach crumble, neatly written in blue ink, her trademark cursive. Elegant but sharp. Then, around page 14, something shifted. The recipe was titled Apple Cider Roast, but instead of oven temps and cook times, it had strange notes in the margins. 3 crates, delivery by 7 p.m. Double-check wire before JL signs. Sugar equals 13.5 K. Confirm count next time. I blinked. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe she was getting forgetful near the end. Or maybe this was grocery shorthand I didn't understand. Except it kept happening. Another recipe. White cake for church potluck. Underneath it, in tiny writing, Shell company confirmed. Client cleared. No contact till quarter close. No instructions. No bake time. Just names, dates, and references that didn't belong in a kitchen. My chest tightened. It wasn't just odd. It was coded. Precise. Like notes from a transaction. Not a dinner party. I closed the book and stared at the ceiling for hours. My fingers tingled like they'd touched something radioactive. The next morning, I asked my dad about it. He barely looked up from his toast. "She just wrote nonsense like that to keep busy," he muttered. "She got eccentric near the end." But that wasn't true. Judith wasn't eccentric. She was calculated, orderly. The kind of woman who alphabetized her pantry and kept her Christmas ornaments labeled by emotional tone. She didn't scribble. She documented. She encrypted. And now, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Even while I helped box up the house, even while Meredith cried performatively over a broken teacup, even when Zach asked if he could borrow my car for a date, I kept returning to the red notebook, reading, flipping, decoding. There were patterns, certain ingredients repeated too often. White sugar, molasses, vanilla, always paired with numbers, never measurements, and always followed by initials. JL came up over and over. Who the hell was JL? Then came one labeled Molasses Trade, Aunt May's Garage. Except we didn't have an Aunt May, and Grandma hated molasses, said it reminded her of stuck things. That page was dated October 12, 1997. Underneath, final shipment, West Route, use proxy, burn notes after. I started shaking. That was the year the old warehouse on 7th Avenue burned down. It had been ruled an accident, insurance payout in the millions. My dad was on the board of the company that owned it. I hadn't thought about that in years. Suddenly, everything inside me went cold. Because this wasn't a cookbook, it was a confession. I didn't sleep that night. I laid in bed with the recipe book on my chest, every breath shallow, every thought, you're imagining things. Just, this isn't safe. My throat tightened. You knew. I tried to keep you out of it, she whispered. I really did. That's when I realized she wasn't surprised. She was scared. Did Dad threaten you? I asked. No, but he doesn't need to. That's the thing about men like him. They don't threaten. They just make sure you don't want to ask. I hung up before she could say anything else, because I knew. And that was enough. I went into the basement next. The one room Judith always kept locked. I'd found the key hidden inside her old tea tin. The air down there smelled like rot and soap. There were boxes, files, old photo albums, and in the back, behind a broken suitcase, I found a filing cabinet labeled Recipe Copies, Not for Use. Inside were dozens of handwritten duplicates, but they weren't in Judith's handwriting. They were in mine, my childhood cursive. Shaky, uneven, copied word for word from Grandma's dictation. Suddenly, I remembered. The summer, I was 9. She made me practice penmanship by copying her recipes. She said it was to preserve the tradition. What she meant was, so she'd have my writing on record. I sank to the floor. Because this wasn't some cute summer project. This was forgery prep. She used me as her alibi. If anything ever got questioned, she could say I wrote it, that I was just playing with pretend recipes. No one would question a child, especially not one smiling next to her grandmother with powdered sugar on her nose. It was genius. It was evil. And it was working. That night, I made 3 copies of the entire scanned archive. One I uploaded to an encrypted drive. One I put on a flash drive, hidden inside my suitcase. And one I printed, sealed in an envelope, and mailed to myself. Because if anything happened to me, I wanted someone to ask why. I also mailed a second envelope. To someone I hadn't spoken to in years. My ex. He was a financial crimes investigator, and the only person I trusted not to laugh me off the phone. The note said, if I disappear, start with the lemon bars. I didn't sleep that night, again. Instead, I sat in Grandma's kitchen. The house was quiet, and I baked. I baked the vanilla peach turnover from the book, one I hadn't touched yet. I followed it exactly. Even the odd margin notes. Peach equals balance owed. Vanilla equals fronted in advance. Get signature. I stared at the golden crusts as they baked. Watched the sugar bubble, like secrets rising to the surface. When they were done, I packed them into a tin, labeled it like she used to, for the committee. I placed the tin on the counter, and then I called my dad. My father didn't answer the first time I called. The second time he picked up with his usual smooth, manufactured calm. Elena, I baked something, I said. A pause. Excuse me? From Grandma's book. Thought I'd drop it off. Silence. Then, Elena, we should talk. I smiled, but it didn't reach my voice. Yeah, I said, we should. He met me at the old law office downtown, the same place the will was read. Funny how grief and guilt often share furniture. When I walked in, he was already sitting at the table, tie loosened, jacket folded over the chair beside him. He looked older than I remembered. Not tired, just worn thin, like something constantly straining beneath his skin. The tin of turnovers was in my hand. I set it on the table between us. "What is this?" he asked. I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out a printed page, one of the recipes from the red book. I slid it across the table to him. He looked down, read, blinked. "You know what this is?" I said. He said nothing. I leaned forward. "I know what you did in '97. I know about the Shellman Fund. I know about the tuition payments. I know you used me." Still nothing. So I dropped the envelope, the one marked E, if she ever starts asking. He didn't touch it. "You don't understand," he started. "No," I snapped. "I understand perfectly. I was the perfect cover, the good daughter, the quiet girl with clean hands. You all thought I'd never ask." His voice stayed even. "And what exactly do you want, Elena?" That's when I smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't mean happy, it means done. "I want you to know," I whispered, "that I could ruin you." And then I stood up, left the turnovers, and walked out. I didn't hear from him that night, or the next, but I knew he got the message, because 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail. It wasn't handwritten. It was typed, cold, professional. A single sentence: "Some things are meant to be buried, you included." There was no return address, but the stamp matched a district office in DC, a building connected to one of our old family donors. So now I knew. This wasn't just family mess. This was bigger. I didn't run. I didn't call the cops. I didn't scream into the void. Instead, I waited. And while I waited, I baked. Every night, a new recipe, a new memory, a new piece of evidence, each one labeled, scanned, sent to that encrypted drive. Because if I've learned anything, it's this: revenge isn't served hot. It's served patient. 3 weeks later, my ex called. He didn't say much, just this: "Elena, you need to be careful. You're not the only one who's been asking questions. And some of these names, they're not small time." I hung up, not because I was scared, but because I finally understood. I had the recipe, I had the ingredients, and now I knew how to cook. That night, I stood in Grandma's kitchen one last time. Same tile, same humming fridge, same flickering light above the stove. I placed the red leather book on the counter. Next to it, a single note. "You tried to make me forget, but I remember everything." Then I walked out, locked the door, and never looked back. They thought I'd stay quiet, that I'd smile through the poison, call it sugar, and thank them for the aftertaste. But some recipes, you only have to taste once, before you realize they were never meant to feed you. They were meant to keep you hungry. Well, I'm not hungry anymore. My name is Eleanor Monroe. I'm 29, used to work in publishing. Now I make coffee for strangers in a city that doesn't ask questions. I live above a bookstore in Portland. The walls are thin, the ceilings leak, and the owner thinks my name is Elle Martin. I let her believe that, because the woman I used to be, the daughter, the obedient heir, the one who signed forms without reading them, she's gone. And in her place is someone who's done being polite. I haven't touched the red book in 3 weeks, not because I'm scared of what's in it. I already know what's in it. What I'm scared of is what it's done to me. I don't trust anyone now, not the man who brings me flowers every Tuesday, not the neighbor who smiles too wide, not even myself, especially when I hear Judith's voice in the back of my head, saying things like, "Sugar makes everything easier to swallow." No, it doesn't. Some things don't go down. Some things stay stuck, like guilt in your throat, like blood under your nails. I work mornings at a cafe called Stagwood. Mostly quiet, mostly regulars. It's a good front. No one asks why I don't use my real name. No one notices that I watch every customer like they might be someone sent to find me, because someone is. I know that now. Last week I spotted a man in a grey jacket who came in 3 times, never bought anything, just waited for a friend that never arrived. He had a mole on his cheek and a scar behind his ear. 2 days later, I saw the same scar on a man pretending to check the plumbing behind my building. Different clothes, same eyes. They're not subtle, but they're not stupid either. They don't need to find me yet. They just need me to feel found. I keep a burner phone under the sink. It only does one thing. Forward emails from the encrypted account I created before I left Cypress Hollow. Every time someone opens the shared folder, I get a ping. So far, 5 journalists have viewed the folder. 2 downloaded everything, but no one's written a word. Too scared, too complicated, too clean on the surface, because who's going to believe that a sweet old Southern woman ran a laundering network out of a pie recipe book? It sounds insane. Until you realize that's what made it perfect. 3 days ago I got a message. It was just a voicemail. No caller ID. Distorted. Almost robotic. We know what you have. What happens next is your decision. I saved it. Played it back 10 times. Tried to analyze the voice. But I already knew. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. And the thing about warnings, I don't ignore them anymore. I started writing again. Not fiction, not stories, not like I used to. Just thoughts, memories, voice memos I record after 2 a.m. when the city sleeps and the refrigerator hums loud enough to drown the fear. Here's one I recorded last night. If I die, I want someone to know I tried, not to be good, but to be honest. They made me a pawn. I became a mirror, and now I'm learning how to be a blade. Yesterday my burner phone buzzed. It was a number I hadn't seen in months, but I knew exactly who it was. Ty, my ex, the financial crimes investigator, the only man who ever looked at me like I wasn't made of porcelain and silence. I picked up. "Elena?" he said, voice low. "Careful." I didn't speak. "There's an offer," he continued. "Not from me. From someone watching this. Closely." "Who?" "I can't say. Not yet. But they know what you're holding. And they're not looking to silence you. They're looking to use you. Use me how? To finish what your grandmother started." I hung up. Not because I didn't want to hear more, but because something inside me shifted. For the first time in months, I wasn't just hunted. I was useful. And if I played this right, I wouldn't just expose them. I'd replace them. My name is Elena Monroe. I'm 33 years old. I used to work in publishing. I lived in a colonial house with hydrangeas out front and secrets buried beneath the floorboards. Now, I rent a 1-bedroom above a bookstore in Portland where the faucet leaks and the landlord thinks my name is Elle Martin. I let her believe that. I let everyone believe whatever keeps them out of my way, because the girl I used to be, the girl who said yes, who smiled through the sour, who mistook manipulation for tradition, she's gone. I burned her. And what's left is hungry. The burner phone buzzes every time someone opens the archive. I keep it in a plastic bag taped to the underside of my sink. It's never charged, unless I'm ready to know who's watching. 3 weeks, 17 views, 5 downloads, 0 headlines. Turns out journalists are cowards when the recipe includes judges, pastors, and mayors. And when the sugar trail leads straight to federal campaign donations, they delete the folder before even finishing page 2. I don't blame them. People think fire is loud. But sometimes, it just waits. The coffee shop where I work is called Stagwood. Nobody there knows I used to be the Monroe girl, the legacy granddaughter, the top of her class, the clean one. Now I'm the one who oversugars the cappuccinos on purpose, just to see who notices. No one ever does. People don't taste the difference between sweet and rot until it's too late, just like I didn't. For 32 years, the first time I realized I was being watched was when the man in the grey jacket came back 3 times in one day. He never ordered anything, just sat in the far corner and waited for his friend. His eyes didn't move like a normal customer's. They scanned, counted, remembered. Like my father's eyes when he'd go quiet mid-conversation, calculating 3 steps ahead. 2 days later, I saw the same scar behind a different man's ear, different hat, same scar, same jacket, folded wrong. Not law enforcement, not press. Too clean, too careful. They weren't here to silence me yet. They just needed me to know. They could. I record voice memos when I can't sleep. No names, no places. Just fragments of the woman I was, and the one I'm becoming. Here's one I recorded last night, 2:37 a.m. They used sugar to silence me. Now I want them to taste what happens when it turns bitter. I don't even flinch hearing myself say that anymore. That used to scare me. The idea of becoming that kind of woman. The cold kind, the calculating kind, the kind who makes a list and doesn't flinch when someone disappears from it. Now I worry I waited too long. Then came the voicemail. No caller ID, distorted. Like it had been scrubbed before it even hit my phone. Just one line. We know what you have. What happens next is your decision. Not a threat, a deal. And the thing about deals, my family never made them with outsiders, unless they were cornered. That same night, Ty called. Ty. The man who once loved me before he realized love wasn't enough to fix the hole Judith carved into me. He used to call me Bird because I flinched at loud sounds and didn't sleep through storms. Now he barely says my name. Elena? I'm here, I said, even though I wasn't sure that was true anymore. There's someone who wants to talk to you, not law enforcement, not a paper, bigger. Bigger how? They don't want to expose your family. They want to use you, to finish what your grandmother started. I said nothing. He added softer, they think you can do it better. I hung up, not because I didn't want to hear more, but because something clicked inside me, a sound like old hinges creaking open after years of being sealed. I remembered Judith's voice again, like a rusted lullaby. The recipe only works when no one knows they're eating it. Well, now I know, and I'm not hungry anymore. I kept the red book wrapped in an old dish towel, hidden behind canned soup, next to the instant oats I never ate. It smelled like mothballs and lemon oil, and something sweeter, like memory, if memory had teeth. I opened it only at night, when the city dimmed down to traffic hums and drunk laughter, when the coffee shop was closed, and I could be alone with the ghosts who wrote these recipes in code. At first, I mapped each recipe to a transaction I remembered hearing about as a child. Pear cobbler for election night. $25,000 donation to the mayor's re-election fund. Savory tarts for out-of-towners. A holding company based in Wyoming suddenly acquiring property in 3 southern states, each one tied to something that didn't smell quite right. I made a wall, not like a movie, no red string, just index cards, pinned above my bed, labeled not with names, but flavors. Cinnamon equals campaign molasses equals offshore account. Vanilla equals hush money. Clove equals real estate laundering. Nutmeg, Siki, family. Stuln was methodical. This wasn't grandma's scribbles. This was a cipher, a system, and I was finally fluent. On the 12th recipe, something caught my eye. It was a lemon chess pie, one of her favorites. But the handwriting wasn't hers. It was messier, smoother, slightly slanted right. I didn't recognize it at first, until the G curved like a fishhook. My heart stuttered. It was my mother's. I stared at it for an hour. Not because I didn't understand what it meant, but because I did. All those years of hearing, "I didn't know, I was just a wife. Your father kept me in the dark." Lies. My mother wasn't innocent. She was just quieter than Judith, just better at staying clean, by letting someone else get their hands dirty. I called her, didn't plan to, but my fingers moved before my brain could stop them. She picked up on the second ring. "Elena?" Her voice was smaller than I remembered. "Hi, Mom." Long pause, then, "You shouldn't be calling me." "I know." Another pause, then she said it, barely above a whisper. "You found it, didn't you?" I didn't answer, because silence is sometimes confirmation. She exhaled, shaky. "Elena, please, let it go. It's too old. It's too deep." "You helped them." "I was protecting you." "No, you were protecting you." Then suddenly her voice turned sharp. "You think you're going to fix this? You're not. You'll drown, or worse, you'll make them notice you again." "I want them to notice me." "Eleanor?" I hung up. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat with the book open, index cards spread across the floor, and I let myself feel it. All of it. The betrayal, the rage, the grief I'd never had time for, and underneath all that, something colder. Purpose. The next morning, I called a podcast, American Ghosts, an independent investigative show that covered everything from missing heiresses to old mob cases. I didn't give my name. I used a voice filter. I gave them one page from the book. Just one. Pecan pie for patriots. But I also gave them the original deposit records it linked to, campaign donations from 2002 to 2014. Within 48 hours, they ran a special episode, The Cookbook That Laundered a County. It exploded. Reddit lit up. TikTok blew it wide open. Hashtags like #sugarfiles, #recipegate, and Judith Knew trended for days. People speculated. Conspiracy theorists latched on. But some knew it was real. Because, within a week, the burner phone buzzed. Someone downloaded the entire archive. And the next day, I got a letter slid under my door. No envelope, no signature. Just one typed line. "If you're going to cook the truth, don't forget who gave you the ingredients." I knew that font, Judith's typewriter. I took a red-eye back to Cypress Hollow. No suitcase, no return ticket, just a hoodie, cash in my sock, and the burner phone in my coat lining. I hadn't been back since the funeral. The town looked the same. Too quiet, too clean. The kind of quiet that only money could enforce. The airport shuttle dropped me off 2 blocks from the old bakery, Judith's pride and shield. There were no lights on now, no more pies, no more whispers, just plywood on the windows, and a for-lease sign no one dared call. I didn't go home. I didn't have one here anymore. Instead, I found a cheap Airbnb with no cameras and a broken lock on the back door. The kind of place where you could disappear inside and no one would ask your name. Just leave the key under the mat and don't stain the sheets. Perfect. I laid the cookbook flat on the floor, open to a recipe called Burnt Butter Keeps No Secrets. 3 ingredients, all crossed out. Beside it, hand-drawn initials, J.M. Not Judith Monroe. Josephine Monroe, my grandmother's sister, long dead, long erased, another ghost. I followed the directions exactly, not the cooking ones, the pattern. It wasn't about butter, it was about sequence. The words spelled out a code. Box 7, Cypress Hollow First Trust. A safety deposit box. Of course she had one. Judith believed in 3 things: sugar, silence, and safes. I waited until right before the bank closed, hat low, hair tied, voice hoarse. "I'm here to access my grandmother's deposit box," I said. "Do you have the key?" I slid it across the counter. It was wrapped in an old cloth, the same one she used to clean her reading glasses. They scanned it, looked me up and down. No ID, just the key. But this town, this name? They didn't ask for more. The vault door clicked open. The woman led me down into the cold room full of secrets and legacy. Box 7 was heavier than I expected, and inside was everything. Contents of Box 7. 1. A stack of photographs. Judith and Josephine in front of the original bakery. My mother as a teen, smiling next to a man I didn't recognize. Me, at age 16, signing something at a family barbecue. The paper was blurred, my expression was not. 2. Mini tape recorder. Label, March 1998, warehouse meeting. Judith's voice. We tie it to the girl. She's young. If it comes back, it lands on her, not us. The IRS won't look twice at a kid with braces and a lemonade stand, but laughter 3. Contract. Signed by my father, my mother, and me. Witnessed by Judith Monroe. Title: Silent Partner Beneficiary Agreement. I felt my chest go tight, like oxygen got pulled out of the room. I'd seen this contract before. I thought it was a permission slip for a scholarship trip. They made me sign at the picnic table. I remember spilling grape soda on it. They laughed, told me I was so grown up now. But what I really did was sign over my name, my future, my culpability. Judith didn't give me the cookbook because she loved me. She gave it to me because she built me for it. I wasn't a mistake. I was the contingency plan, if the empire ever cracked. I was the pre-lit fuse, a 16-year-old name tied to every dirty transfer, a teenager scapegoat. All they had to do was wait, and when the house caught fire, they'd just say, she acted alone. I left the bank without saying a word. Walked all the way to the cemetery. Judith's grave sat under a dogwood tree, too polished, too white. I wanted to spit, scream, dig her up. Instead, I sat down and whispered, You trained me so well, Grandma. I finally know how to finish what you started, but not how you wanted it. That night I packed up every piece of evidence. I scanned the photos, uploaded the audio, transcribed the contract, and added a note. I was 16, I had braces. I thought it was a school form. Then I hit send. Not to a journalist, to everyone. I didn't sleep the night I uploaded everything. I thought I would feel afraid, or sick, or vindicated. But what I felt was quiet. Not peace. Not yet. But quiet, like the stillness before thunder. The file was called The Sugar Files, Clean Copy, Inside, 73 digitized recipes, 36 annotated transaction links, 1 audio file, 1 signed contract, 1 written statement from me. I didn't hide it behind a paywall, didn't send it to a single outlet. I sent it to hundreds, journalists, activists, anonymous boards, 2 whistleblower repositories, and 1 very specific inbox at the IRS, flagged as inactive. Let's just say, it's not. It took 17 hours to go viral. The podcast picked it up again. Reddit reignited. YouTube conspiracy channels turned my family tree into digital murder boards. But this time, people believed it, not just because the evidence was real, but because the voice on the tape didn't just suggest guilt, it taught it. Judith's voice, syrup thick and certain. Never name names, just flavors. Cinnamon for campaign, nutmeg for internal threats, molasses when you need it buried. The way she laughed after that, it echoed like a weapon. Then came Zach, my brother, my golden boy, the one who inherited the big house and the small spine. I thought he'd lay low, but of course he didn't. 3 days after the leak, he showed up on local TV. Press conference, new haircut, clean suit. I found the book, he told reporters. I always knew something was off. I'm doing the right thing by coming forward. The audacity made my teeth hurt. He held up a red spiral notebook, that wasn't even the original, just a decoy I'd left years ago, filled with actual dessert recipes. He was smiling. He thought this was his moment, so I gave him one. I stitched together a short video, 5 minutes, black background, just audio, Judith's tape, a few photos. Then my voice. If he was the whistleblower, why does this contract have my 16-year-old signature? Why does the audio include my name as the fall guy? Ask him. Ask my mother. Ask the whole fucking town why they let it go on for so long. I uploaded it at midnight. By dawn, it had 3 million views. Zach tried to deny it, then cried on camera, then disappeared. Next was the pastor, then the county treasurer, then 2 board members from the school district, all named in the files, all connected to Judith's Pantry Charitable Fund, which, as it turns out, wasn't charitable. Or a fund, it was a shell company. I didn't even know what that meant a year ago. Now I could draw you the map in my sleep. Local news picked it up first, then regional, then national. CNN called it the Sugar Network. Fox News spun it as weaponized nostalgia. Twitter called it Grammagate. But none of them could ignore the numbers. $6.3 million in undeclared transfers. 4 tax violations tied to public officials. 9 indictments in under 48 hours. And at the center, me. Or rather, the recipe book. I didn't speak publicly, didn't go on camera, didn't take credit. I watched it all unfold from a 3rd-story window in a borrowed apartment, drinking stale coffee, smiling for once. A week later, a letter arrived, this time in an envelope. Thick paper, sealed with wax, no return address. Inside, you were never meant to survive this, but you did. And now that you've burned the whole kitchen down, don't forget who taught you to cook. I didn't need to guess who sent it. It wasn't a threat, wasn't praise either. It was a nod, a twisted form of respect, from one monster to another. Judith would have been proud and horrified. That's how I knew I'd finally done it right. I returned to the house on a Tuesday. The one with the wraparound porch, the white shutters Judith insisted we repaint every spring, and the hydrangeas now dying in clumps along the driveway. No one had lived there since the indictments. The windows were boarded. The mailbox had collapsed. Someone had spray-painted Liar's Lair in red across the side fence. It didn't hurt. Not anymore. Because this place had never been a home. It was a packaging center, where people like me were wrapped in sugar, tagged legacy, and sent out into the world to continue the recipe. I wasn't here to forgive it. I was here to bury it. Inside, it smelled like lemon polish and old rot. I walked room to room, not like someone returning, but like someone inspecting the remains of a fire that hadn't started yet. There were still notes pinned to the fridge. Still a pile of Judith's sweaters in the cedar chest. Still the tin of her favorite cookies in the cabinet. Untouched, sealed. I didn't touch anything. Until I reached the study. That's where I found it. A second copy of the red book, the master copy. This one wasn't coded. It was indexed. Every name, every date, every transaction, every betrayal. Not just mine, my mother, my brother, Judith, and dozens of others. This wasn't a cookbook. It was a ledger. I flipped to the last page. One single line, handwritten in black ink. If you're reading this, you've already chosen. You are not the secret keeper. You are the final ingredient. I should have cried, but all I did was nod. I took it to the backyard, ripped the index out page by page, and fed it into the fire pit. Then the photos, then the tin, then the lace curtains Judith was so obsessed with, and finally, the original book, the one I'd carried, learned from, bled under. I set it on the coals, shut the lid, and walked away before it was done burning. The next morning, I left one copy in the local library. I slid it between a Southern cookbook and a memoir from a preacher's wife. Inside the front cover, I taped a note. This book won't teach you to bake, but it will teach you who ate first and who paid for it. Then I left. No name, no goodbye, no second chance. Now I live 2 states over. New name, new job, still me, still Elena, even if nobody calls me that anymore. Sometimes I hear my grandmother's voice when I close the fridge. Sometimes I dream of sugar melting into ink. Sometimes I wake up with lemon on my tongue and rage in my lungs. But mostly, I breathe, freely, sharply, alone. And for the first time in my life, I'm not sweet. I'm not scared. I'm not sorry. I leave you with this. You wanted me to stay quiet. You should have known better.